Well, that's human nature. We can't leave the GOAT debate alone, can we? I think each of those fighters, have talents before MMA became a sport. For instance, Fedor, one who has a real big claim to, the GOAT, knew combat sambo before anybody else did. So he had a real great understanding of striking and grappling when MMA started. Something a lot of people didn't, right? The original MMA guys were street fighters, even if they were martial artists to a little extent. Like Kimo was a total street fighter. Tank Abbott, okay, he was trained, but he was a street fighter too, right? But Fedor, meanwhile, probably knew the street, and he also knew combat sambo. Like George St. Pierre, Kyokushinkai karate, right? Very well versed in it. And then he taught himself wrestling to the point where he was competing with the Canadian Olympic team, made for a devastating style. Anderson Silva, a Taekwondo black belt who brought his Muay Thai, with him. So his kicks were better than anybody, and his strikes and his setups were better. And he knew jujitsu enough where he was competent off his back. But really, if you look at it, he was a lot like Chuck Liddell, meaning he kept the fight on the feet as much as he could. And let's talk about Chuck Liddell. Cal Poly wrestler, right? But also a Kempo guy his whole life who kickboxed also. So by the time MMA ran around, he was ready for it. Even though he had holes, which Jeremy Horn exposed with him. So those early guys all had deep understanding of things. Randy Couture, yes, an elite wrestler on an Olympic level, but on top of that, what? He was a boxer in the army. And that was way ahead of where most people were at that day and age. Brock Lesnar, not an enormous man like in Vitaly Klitschko style, but also what? A D1 wrestler. Who knew how to be a elite athlete as far as cardio and everything else, especially in that heavyweight division. So, listener, look, when we talk about pound for pound lists, there's so much that goes into it, and era and whatnot. Now, we've entered a new era, and everybody's mentioned this. I'm not the first, but we knew it was coming, where people are MMA fighters only, right? So those disparate styles that people came from isn't going to be there anymore. And that's going to be very interesting. Oh, BJ Penn, let's talk about another one. Look, BJ Penn was just such an incredible athlete. He won Jiu-Jitsu Worlds like a year or two of training or something like that. Just a really gifted guy. But what do all these guys have in common? BJ Penn, Anderson Silva, they fought on too long. We watched them become human, and suddenly they fell out of the GOAT debate. Fedor, to a certain extent, did that too. Not as bad as BJ and Anderson. But George St. Pierre and Khabib, they retired at the right time. Why? Because you remember them as winners. You don't remember them losing, and that is so important in this debate. Everybody, read my book, Warrior of the Light.